Welcome to the Home Team Sacramento podcast. I'm Josh Takimoto, and we are back for another episode. Unfortunately, like I mentioned last episode, we were supposed to have a guest, but unfortunately, some things didn't line up and didn't work out, so we had to uh, reschedule with that specific guest. So here I am, solo again tonight, and I wanted to make my best effort to get this thing going consistently. I will say that moving forward, especially for the month of May and early June, we have some awesome guests lined up already. So hopefully, this is the start of more consistency with this podcast. But either way, like I said, it's me, just me tonight. And actually, I did have something pretty specific that I wanted to talk about tonight because if you've listened to this podcast or if you know me, you know that I have a baseball background. I've played baseball my entire life. I didn't play at a high level or anything like that, but I've always loved the game. Played all the way through high school. Played in some men's leagues after high school and during the college years. And if I had the chance, if I had the opportunity, I would love to do it again. Just because I love the game so much. I always have. It's my favorite sport. And this week, just a couple of days ago, because I'm actually recording this a couple of days before we're going to post this. This week, if you are a baseball fan, then no doubt you've heard the unfortunate news about Mike Trout, the center fielder for the Los Angeles Angels, and it's a bummer because if you know anything about Mike Trout, first of all, I'll say this: he's been one of my favorite players since he's entered the league. I love everything about the way he plays, the way he carries himself, both on and off the field. I just think he's not just an amazing baseball player, but from everything that I've heard from interviews with other players, people off the field, organizations, he seems like just an incredible human being as well. And just a truly generational talent when it comes to the sport of baseball. And basically, since he's been in the league, he's been considered, especially for the first 7 or 8 years, maybe 9 years of his career, every year considered one of the best, if not the best in the game, and potentially going down as one of the best to ever play the game all time. I mean, it's just incredible what he's been able to do. But what's been an unfortunate storyline for the last, I think, 5 years, maybe 5 or 6 years, it has been his injury history. And unfortunately, he's been hit with some unfortunate injuries that have really cut into the amount of time he's been able to stay on the field and the amount of time that he's been able to play the game. And it's been unfortunate because obviously with any sport, no matter what sport it is, you want to see the best play and you want to see them play at their absolute peak of what they're capable of doing. And so for him, that just hasn't been the case for the last few years. And I think it's been frustrating, obviously, for him. It's probably been frustrating for his team. But I think even for just fans of the game, even if you're not a fan of the Los Angeles Angels, you just love the game of baseball, it's frustrating because you're like, man, you want to see this guy play and you feel for him. You feel bad for him because you can tell he loves his game with everything he has and has just been hit with some unfortunate injuries. The most recent, earlier this week, it was announced that he has a torn meniscus and he'll be out for a decent amount of time. Maybe not season ending, but a decent amount of time. And so I'll be honest, like I said, as a fan of him and as a fan of the game, me personally, I'm really bummed. Like I was truly saddened when I heard this because it's like, man, the guy's worked so hard from dealing with an injury last year. I know he has some kind of chronic back issue that he has to deal with, and you see all the work he's putting in, and then all of that just to come up and deal with this injury this year so early in the season. It's a huge bummer. And as I was thinking more about this situation with Mike Trout and what he's been dealing with, and of all the injuries, it made me think about this idea of, honestly, it made me think about all these life lessons that we talk about in sports all the time, right? Specifically on this podcast, we're constantly talking about how sports provides a platform for coaches to teach life lessons. We get to implement these ideas of hard work, dedication, determination, motivation. We get to talk to athletes about dealing with hardships and all of these different things, responsibility, being on time. There's so many life lessons that we get to teach as coaches to our athletes through sports. And it's such a rewarding job, not just because of teaching them how to compete and play the sport better, but again, you're giving them lessons that they'll carry through the rest of their life if they're taught well. And as I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about this situation with trout, one of the things that came to mind was one of the most important yet most difficult lessons we can teach when it comes to sports and life is this idea of life isn't fair. And we hear people say that all the time, life isn't fair. But I think when it comes to sports, we see that concept or that idea play out all the time. You have an athlete who is giving everything they have, constantly putting in the work in the gym, on the field, putting extra work in. Yet because there's a gap in talent and they just don't quite have that same amount of talent as someone else, they don't get the same opportunities. It's not fair. You have a player that has tremendous talent, has this road to greatness, and they get hit with an injury that ends their season or potentially ends their career. It's not fair. You have games on a smaller scale. You have games that are decided sometimes by bad calls or people that, you find out that teams have bent the rules or cheated, just flat out cheated sometimes. And you don't find out until later when they've already experienced those moments of glory and success and celebration. It's not fair. You have athletes who are giving their very best, but because of social, economic, financial reasons, they're competing against teams that have more resources, more opportunities. They're bigger, faster, and stronger, and they can give everything they have in that moment. But the bottom line is they just really can't keep up with the competition because they're in a very different circumstance. Again, it's not fair. And we can sit here all day and talk about all the things that aren't fair, all the reasons why we should have this, but we don't, all the reasons why we're at this level rather than a higher level. We can look at all of those things. We can complain about all of those things, but at the end of the day, the reality is life is not fair, and sports is no exception. Now, the difference is, as coaches, we have an opportunity to teach our athletes and walk them through these unfair situations. We can use sports as the vehicle to teach those lessons. And what better way to teach that when you're playing the sport that you love, the thing that you've dedicated your life to, the thing that you think about, you dream about, you wake up thinking about. When you take that thing and you apply this idea of life isn't fair, it can feel devastating because when you're giving everything you have to your sport and things don't work out the way you had hoped, even though you're doing all the right things, it hurts. It stings. But what better time for a coach to teach this idea of life not being fair and how to persevere through it? Because we can say all we want that life's not fair, life's not fair, life's not fair, but at the end of the day, that's not helping anybody. You're just stating a fact. Life isn't fair. And although that's a good reality to understand as we grow up, as we get older, as we have jobs and families and different responsibilities, it's good to understand that concept. But as a coach, we should be teaching our athletes how to persevere through it. How do we deal with this idea that life's not fair? When we don't get the thing that we've been working so hard for, the thing that we've been dreaming about, how do we continue to go on? How do we get past that? How do we pivot rather than completely stop what we're doing, all because we hit a brick wall and we can't get past it to pursue the dream that we had? See, I understand this idea of life not being fair, but if we're not teaching our athletes how to get beyond that, how to deal with that, how to deal with the emotions that come with that, how to deal with the mentality that comes with that, then we're missing an amazing opportunity to build and develop stronger, more mentally tough people. It's not enough just to say, hey, life's tough, deal with it. We've got to teach them how to deal with it. Because we all know this. And a lot of you that are listening have been coaching for years. You've been in the sports world for years. You have your own families, you have, responsibilities, and you understand as adults that life doesn't get more fair as you go on. No, there's more opportunities for life to be unfair. You might not get the job that you've been working so hard for. And I mean, if you want to get like real serious, how many times have people lost loved ones in unfair circumstances? A disease that took someone's life. So maybe someone was in a car accident. That person was doing nothing wrong. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And because life is unfair sometimes, we've lost people to those types of circumstances. And so I know for a fact that athletes are dealing with a lot of different things in their lives. And they're not just dealing with a bad call or a bad circumstance on the field. They're not just dealing with the fact that, oh, I didn't get the starting spot on this team, or I'm not getting as much playing time as I wish I would, or I lost the game because of this bad call. They're dealing with other life things. And so again, if we're not teaching them how to cope and deal and persevere through these moments when life's unfair, then I think we're doing them a massive disservice. I think we've got to use sports as a platform, as a canvas to help them understand and help them grow in those moments. And luckily we get to use much less serious moments within sports. Like, how do you get past a bad call, an egregiously bad call was made? How do we get past that? How do you move on? Maybe it cost you a game. Maybe it cost you a major moment in the game. You can sit there and complain about it, but you can sit there and continue to rant and rave about how it's not fair and how it's it was a problem, how it cost you something. But at the end of the day, there's not much we can do other than move on. And if we continue to be a prisoner of those unfair moments, then they continue to act as weights that will continuously hold us down. It will prevent us from getting further moving forward because we're so stuck on all of the things that weren't fair. And I'm talking about things that are actually not fair. I mean, you think about all these different successful people that have persevered through incredible things. You look at all these athletes that had career-ending injuries, things that completely changed the trajectory of their life, yet they've still found a way to move on and be successful. I always think of someone like Inky Johnson, who was a promising D1 college football player, and in one moment had a horrific injury and completely lost any function or mobility or any usage in his arm. He's one of the best public speakers, one of the best motivational speakers in the world. Why? Because he didn't allow that one moment to completely derail his life. He shifted his passion into something different. He could have sat there, and understandably so by a lot of people, and just sat there and thought, man, life's unfair. Why me? Life's unfair. This sucks. But instead, he allowed that to be the fuel that motivated him to keep going. He wasn't going to become a prisoner to his circumstance. He was going to keep going. And see, I think a lot of times what it comes down to is our character. I talk about character a lot on this show, and I think our character is sharpened when we choose to take on those unfair situations head on. I think it shows a lot about our character, but I think it's also something that forges our character as well. Because there's going to be a lot of people in life that look at unfair situations and say, you know what, it's unfair. I'm going to stop trying because I've been dealt a bad hand. And like I said, in some situations, you might look at it, it's like, yeah, I get it. That person's been put in a tough spot. It makes sense that they gave up. But I think the most successful people, the people that achieve the greatest things, never let those things stop them. They find a way. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying those people just are always positive and always looking on the bright side. I'm sure they have some pretty dark moments where they're thinking, man, life's unfair and this sucks. I don't want to keep going. Yet they find the strength to keep going. They find the strength to keep moving forward. And I think that's where we really find out how strong our character is. And so like I said, all of this was really stemmed from this idea of, again, Mike Trout, what he was dealing with, the, unfortunate circumstance he finds himself in. But, uh, it's a bummer. And again, for a guy who's, uh, from all accounts, seems to be a good dude, seems to be someone who works hard, who puts the time and effort into his craft of baseball, and is a great teammate. It's unfortunate that these types of things happen to good people. But again, we can sit, any of us, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're pursuing, we can all sit here and complain about the things and the hand that we've been dealt. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change anything. We either have to choose to keep moving forward, or we have to be okay with the fact that we're stuck in that spot. And again, I really believe that the most successful people find a way to feed off of the unfair situations that they've been dealt. I think the people that are the most successful don't just look at an unfair situation as something they have to get past. I think it's something they look at, and I think it's almost like a competition to them. I think it sometimes, like when you look at people who are really successful, it almost feels like it's a competition between them and their circumstance, them and their unfair situation. And they almost look at it as though they're trying to outlast the other. It's like, hey, you're not going to stop me. This situation sucks. I acknowledge that. This situation is really hard. It's not fun. But they almost look at their situation and think, if you think you're going to outlast me in this game of life, you've got another thing coming. Because I'm going to use this as fuel to keep me motivated. I'm going to use this as fuel to keep me moving forward. And I'm not going to allow my circumstance to dictate where or how far I go. And I think the most successful people, the people who aren't weighed down by the unfair situations in life, I think they have that mentality. And I think that's why they've been able to overcome so much, is because they just don't look at their situation and think, I'm a prisoner to this. I think they look at their situation and think, I'm going to succeed despite my situation. And so, I think it's, if we look at this whole situation, if we look at this idea of life not being fair, I think it's not always easy. But I think it is necessary for us to have this type of mentality if we want to be the best versions of ourselves. I think dealing with unfair situations is never fun. And I fully acknowledge that this is not a one size fits all idea. Like I said before, sometimes people are dealing with horrific things that extend well beyond the field. They extend way beyond the court, way beyond sports. People are dealing with real life issues, and some are much, much more difficult than others. And, I would never want to diminish or minimize what people are going through. Life is difficult for everybody. And how difficult it is for each person, it varies from person to person. It varies from life circumstance. It varies from, what people are dealing with. But at the end of the day, I think no matter what the circumstance is, no matter what or how difficult the situation is, I think pushing through those unfair situations, and instead of looking at it as, hey, this is unfair, I don't want to keep going on, looking at it as, it's unfair, but I have to keep going. I cannot let this slow me down. I cannot let this control my life. I have to keep moving forward. I think that's one of the most important things. So, like I said, I think within sports, this idea of life not being fair is probably one of the most important yet most difficult lessons that we have the opportunity to learn in sports. But again, I think it's as coaches, I think it's our responsibility to walk our athletes through those moments. So that way, in the sports world, you can teach them how to deal with an unfair moment, such as a bad call or a minor injury. So that way, when the bigger unfair moments of life happen, they're better equipped and better prepared to take those things on. I think it's just a really important thing. So, um, a lot of things are unfair, and everybody deals with different things. But I think, you know, we got to keep moving forward. And coaches, you have you, especially with a lot of your life experience. I know, coaches, that you've dealt with some stuff throughout your life, and so I think you have a lot of wisdom when it comes to those things, and you have a great platform to teach your young athletes how to deal with that. So please continue to do the great work that you guys are doing. Continue to have influence and impact on those athletes, and walk them through those things. Teach them how to deal with the unfair situations in life, because they're counting on you. And, I hate to put that much responsibility on you, but at the same time, I think that's partially why you signed up to be a coach. It wasn't just to be someone who teaches the skills of a sport or the strategy of a sport, but I believe that you guys all chose to be coaches because you want to have impact on the lives of young athletes. So keep doing your thing. We appreciate you as always. Yeah, this is a little longer than I anticipated, but man, I just felt like this was one on my heart, especially because of what happened with Mr. Mike Trout. So hopefully he gets better soon, because I love watching him play ball. All that being said, you guys can follow us at Home Team Sac on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have a Facebook group called Home Team Sacramento Coaches. TikTok, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, both on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we also, if you enjoy watching this video rather than just listening, you can watch it on Spotify as well. And if you would be so kind, please, please, please go to Apple Podcasts to leave us a 5-star rating and review. We would definitely appreciate that. And yeah, spread the word. Let people know about this podcast. Like I said, we have some great guests coming up. I can't remember what the exact schedule is. It may not be next week, but it might be the week after. But we do have a few guests lined up already that I'm really excited about. And so you guys won't have to listen to my voice every single week. So there you go. You got some relief pitchers on the way to help you out and not have to listen to me every single week. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week. See ya.